My name is Kate Dawson. I'm 42 years old, and on Christmas Eve, I came home from a double ER shift to find my 16-year-old daughter curled up on the couch like a stray left out in the cold. I'd been at the hospital for nearly 18 hours, wrists sore from compressions, my shoes still sticky with someone else's crisis running on cold coffee and spite. The last patient of the night had looked me dead in the eye and insisted he was just tired. He was also blue. It was that kind of shift. So when I saw Abby's boots by the door, my first thought was someone must have gotten hurt. Then I noticed her coat flung over the armrest, the overnight bag she'd packed still zipped tight, and Abby herself balled up on the couch in that stiff, contorted way people sleep when they don't really believe they belong. I stood there a second, waiting for the logic to catch up. She was supposed to be at my parents' place. Christmas Eve was their tradition. Abby had begged to drive herself this year, newly licensed and proud of it. She'd even left early to be extra polite. My husband and I were both working, so the plan made sense. Until it didn't. "Abby," I asked gently. Her eyes opened instantly, like she hadn't truly been sleeping. "Hey," she said, sitting up slowly. "Why are you here?" I asked. "They said there wasn't room," she said, and her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. She tried to shrug like it didn't matter, but it did. "Room where I asked." "At the table," she said. Then even quieter. "They said they weren't expecting me, that there were too many people already." She bit her lip, looked down. Grandma said she couldn't just pull up another chair last minute. She looked stressed, like I was adding to her load. "But you got there on time, right?" I asked. She nodded. "Right on time. I even brought cookies." She opened the door like she'd seen a ghost, then said there wasn't a bed left either, that they didn't want me driving back late, but also didn't know where else to put me. She paused, cleared her throat. "So I left." "Did anyone offer to drive you home?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She shook her head. "Nope. Did they at least let you eat?" I said. Another shrug. The table was packed. Lily was in my usual seat. Grandpa was laughing with her like she was royalty. Nobody looked at me. Then Grandma said, "It's just a full house this year." Aunt Janelle nodded. So I left. She gestured to the counter. I made toast. I turned and saw it. One sad slice on a paper towel, slightly bent half a banana next to it. That was her Christmas dinner. I felt something inside me coil, not anger, not yet. Just that glassy, frozen calm right before the break. "I wasn't hungry anyway," she said quickly. "Not really." And that's when her eyes started to fill. She blinked hard, tried to fight it, bit her lip like she could chew through the emotion, but it didn't work. "They made it seem like I'd imposed," she whispered. "Like showing up after it was all planned was rude." The tears came quiet and slow, like a faucet that won't shut all the way. "I was going to bring a pie," she added, "but I figured they had enough food already." I sat beside her, wrapped my arm around her shoulder. She leaned in immediately like she'd been holding herself upright out of spite. After a few minutes, she wiped her nose on her sleeve and said, "I know they don't like you, but I thought..." She stopped. "You thought you were just the kid I finished." She nodded. "They didn't even say it meanly," she added, just like it was a practical thing. Like I was a folding chair they didn't have space for. I didn't go to bed right away. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at her bag, still zipped, her carefully chosen sweater, the tin of cookies she made herself. I opened the fridge. There was nothing special in there. We hadn't planned a backup Christmas. Why would we? We trusted them. That's what stuck with me. Not the toast, not the lack of presents, not even that she drove home alone. It was that they looked her in the eyes. This kind, awkward, brave girl who showed up on time with cookies and a smile and told her with 28 people inside, "There's no room for you." They didn't mean no chairs. They meant not you. The next morning, my husband got home. Abby was still asleep. I told him what happened. He stood silently for a moment, then asked, "So what do we do now?" I didn't answer, not yet. But I already knew. Because there's turning the other cheek, and then there's turning away a 16-year-old girl who just wanted to be included. And they chose the latter. I didn't make a scene. I took action. The next morning, my parents found a letter at their door and started screaming. I don't remember the first time I was called the weird one. Probably before I even knew what the word meant. When I was 6, I found a dead bird and asked if I could dissect it, not to be creepy, just to understand how it worked. My mom slapped the kitchen counter and shouted, "Jesus! Kate, what's wrong with you?" My sister Janelle screamed. Told everyone I was trying to build a zombie. I got grounded for scaring her. That pretty much set the tone. I loved anatomy books, asked for a microscope for Christmas, asked questions about blood flow during dinner. In school, I raised my hand. At home, that made me a show-off. Nobody else in my family went to college. Most didn't finish high school the first time. I studied during commercials. My dad joked, half-joked, that I wasn't his. Too smart to be mine, he'd say, then laugh. I overheard him ask my mom once if she'd ever cheated. Said he always wondered because I didn't look like anyone. I didn't sleep much that night. Never brought it up. Janelle was the golden child, loud, likable, average in school, but great at turning every mistake into a charming story. She could cry on cue. Everyone loved her for watching out for me. She called me Dr. Freak when I studied medicine. Upgraded it to Dr. Moneybags once I actually became one. When I got the full-ride scholarship, my parents didn't hug me. No celebration. My mom asked what kind of guy would want a girl smarter than him. I told her maybe I'd marry myself. She didn't laugh. I paid my way. Waited tables, took overnight shifts, came home with sore feet and burnout wedged in my bones. They never visited once. Years later, I bought my parents a house, a modest 2-bedroom. I paid the mortgage, the title's in my name. They lived like it was theirs. Rent-free, utilities covered. Medical care too, since I had good insurance. I never said no, until recently. Janelle called. Her daughter Lily had gotten into some fancy STEM summer camp. "She's got your brain," Janelle said. It was $200. I told her no, not unkindly. I said I was already covering too much, that maybe she could apply for aid. Her tone snapped like a trap. Wow, must be nice to have everything and still be so stingy. A week later, I overheard my mom say I was holding Lily back, just like I always held Janelle back by existing. I didn't fight, didn't explain, just said no. That was 3 weeks before Christmas. Abby was excited to go. Packed early, brought presents for the younger cousins, left on time. Then Christmas Eve came and she came home instead of staying overnight because they told her there wasn't room. And maybe they thought she wouldn't tell me. Maybe they thought she'd shrink. But she didn't. She came home. And I made my decision. Quietly, legally, precisely. They turned her away. Now it was my turn. After Christmas, I stopped answering the phone. No texts, no explanations. Just silence. It wasn't a strategy, it was a survival reflex. The kind of quiet that settles into your bones when you've finally run out of space to justify someone else's cruelty. I didn't tell Abby much, just that things might be changing. She didn't ask questions, and I think that said more than anything. My parents, of course, noticed right away. They always notice when the benefits stop flowing. Within 48 hours of me dropping off the letter, my mom started calling. Voicemails ranging from weepy confusion to blistering anger, like flipping through a mood ring stuck in a microwave. "We don't understand why you're doing this. We've always been there for you. Don't forget who raised you, raised me." If neglect and sarcasm count as parenting, then sure. I ignored them. I wasn't interested in arguing anymore. I was interested in boundaries. Of course, that didn't sit well. When manipulation stops working, toxic people escalate. Janelle posted a picture of Lily doing some science experiment on Facebook with the caption, "So proud of our little genius, even if some people in the family don't support her." Subtle. Abby saw it first. She didn't say anything, just turned her phone screen toward me while we were at the grocery store waiting in line behind someone arguing over expired coupons. "That's about you," she said quietly. "No," I said, grabbing a bag of tortilla chips, "it's about them. And their guilt, not ours." She nodded, but didn't smile. A week later, my mom showed up at the ER, not for a medical issue. She waited by the nurse's station like a sitcom character from the wrong genre. I was coming off a 12-hour shift, blood under my nails, and a neck cramp that felt like it could kill me faster than any patient could. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't break stride. "I'm working." "Then take a break." "Not for this." She huffed. "You've lost your mind. This isn't about Abby anymore. This is about punishing us." I stopped then. Not for her, but for myself, to remember that I wasn't crazy or cruel or confused. "You turned away a 16-year-old girl on Christmas Eve," I said flatly. "Because she wasn't on your guest list. You didn't forget her. You excluded her. There's a difference." "That's not fair," she snapped. "We didn't plan for that many people. We couldn't accommodate everyone. There were 28 people, including a neighbor. But no room for your own granddaughter." She didn't answer. Just crossed her arms and said, "You're blowing this out of proportion, and you're pretending this is about chairs." I walked away. She didn't follow. The next day, I changed my phone settings to send her directly to voicemail. Janelle called next. She started with fake concern. "I'm worried about you," she said. "You seem unstable. People are talking." I was in my kitchen making dinner when she said it. I looked down at the cutting board at the carrot I was slicing and pictured myself dicing her entire argument into oblivion. "Let them talk," I said. "They weren't there when Abby made toast for Christmas dinner. You're acting vindictive, and you're acting like a toddler who lost their free babysitter." That's when she screamed. Literally screamed. "You've always been jealous of me, of the attention I get. Admit it. That's why you're doing this. You're bitter that people like me more." I laughed, quietly. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetically revealing. "Janelle," I said, "I'm a doctor. I've resuscitated gunshot victims. I've held hands through cancer diagnoses. I don't care about your PTA clout or your Facebook likes. I care that my daughter was treated like a stray dog by people she trusted. That's it. Click." I hung up. The phone didn't stop ringing after that, of course. One cousin left a voicemail saying, "You only get one family." Another texted, "I just think it's sad it came to this." Not a single one asked what Abby went through. Not a single one questioned why she left in tears, why the girl who brought cookies was turned away like an Amazon return that came too early. All they cared about was comfort, peacekeeping their illusion of unity. And I wasn't playing that game anymore. At work, I was fine, efficient, focused. At home, I was quiet, methodical. I started going through paperwork, deeds, tax returns, utility bills. It's amazing how much you forget when you've been silently supporting people for years. I pulled up my financial records. Over $68,000 in parental aid over the last 7 years. Not counting the house purchase, not counting insurance, not counting the time I used my vacation days to sit in waiting rooms with them when they had appointments they were too scared to attend alone. I printed everything, filed it neatly, made backup copies. Then I started forwarding things to a lawyer, just to document, just to prepare. My husband said nothing at first. Then one night we were both brushing our teeth and he said, "You're sure you're ready for this?" "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." He nodded. "Spit." "Okay then, let me know how I can help." That's what love looks like, by the way. Not grand speeches, just showing up. Around the same time, Abby stopped asking about the family. She no longer lingered by her phone hoping for an apology that would never come. She spent more time at the library, came home with new books, smiled more. One night, I caught her humming while making ramen, and it hit me she was healing in the absence of them. That silence wasn't hurting her, it was helping her. I wasn't the only one who needed the distance. They weren't just toxic to me. They had been wrapping their fingers around her self-worth too subtly for years. Comments about her weight, her hobbies, her quietness. All the micro jabs that she never told me about until she thought they didn't matter anymore. "Grandma used to say I reminded her of you," Abby said once while we folded laundry. She didn't mean it nicely. I looked at her. "And what did you say?" She smiled. That I was proud of that. I could have cried right then. Instead, I reached for another towel and said, "Good. You should be." That weekend, the water got shut off at my parents' house, temporarily. Just a missed payment. But instead of calling the utility company or, say, paying their bill, they called me 4 times. I let it go to voicemail. Then I forwarded the last message to my lawyer. "We're officially done," I told him. "No more bills, no more help, no more lifelines." "Got it," he said. "Let me know when you're ready to file." That night, I slept better than I had in months. The air felt cleaner, like something had finally exhaled. Abby made pancakes the next morning. No occasion, just because. She sprinkled cinnamon on top and said, "They're not very fluffy." "They're perfect," I said. Because they were. Not because of how they looked, but because she felt safe enough to try. Safe enough to experiment. To fail. To taste life without judgment hovering over her shoulder. That was the real gift. Not the house, not the bills, not the debt I'd carried like a secret shame badge. It was this, watching my daughter unfurl in the absence of scorn. And the more I watched, the more I realized how much they'd taken. From me, from her, from our future, and how little I owed them in return. Nothing, not a dime, not a phone call, not a second chance. Nothing. They weren't just losing me anymore. They were losing the future they could have had if they'd only made room. I didn't expect Aunt Elaine to show up on a Tuesday afternoon with a tin of oatmeal cookies and the kind of look you usually reserve for someone whose dog just died. She didn't even knock first, just called from the porch, said she was in the neighborhood. I let her in mostly out of morbid curiosity. We hadn't talked in over a year, and even then, it was mostly polite nods at a funeral. She sat at the kitchen table, untouched tea steaming between us, and finally said, "It just doesn't sound like you." I stared at her. "Throwing your parents out like that?" she added, real soft, like she was breaking the news to herself. I laughed once. Not the funny kind. I stood up, grabbed the folder I'd prepared days ago, and slid it across the table like a dealer laying down their last hand. Mortgage statements, utility bills, copies of insurance payments, pharmacy receipts, Christmas photos. One in particular, 28 people at the table. Abby not among them. They told her there was no room, I said. Not just no chair. No room in their lives for her. Aunt Elaine flipped through the papers, her expression shifting from doubt to something colder. "I didn't know," she said. "No," I corrected. "They didn't tell you." Big difference. She left not long after the cookie tin still full. 3 days later, I got a text I didn't understand before. I do now. I stared at it longer than I should have. That was the first time someone in the family acknowledged reality without immediately following it up with a but. No excuses, no revisionist history, just the truth. That tiny acknowledgement lit a fuse. I called my lawyer the next morning. "They haven't moved," he said. "Then we proceed," I replied. The house went on the market the same day. I wasn't greedy. I set a fair price. It was a nice neighborhood, good schools, no major repairs needed. Within 48 hours, we had offers. One couple was especially eager. Expecting twins, looking to move closer to work. "They want vacant possession," the agent reminded me. "Understood," I said. I didn't plan to be there when it happened. There's a difference between setting a boundary and throwing a grenade. I was done with theatrics. The legal team handled the rest. I heard it wasn't pretty, screaming, accusations. My mom sobbing in the front yard while my dad barked at the movers. But by then, it wasn't my problem anymore. That title had expired. Janelle took them in, of course. Of course she did. She'd always fancied herself the martyr in someone else's redemption arc. For about 3 weeks, she gave interviews to cousins like she was doing PR for a documentary called Kate the Downfall. "She's abandoning them," she said, all over a little holiday mix-up. Then one day, she was on my porch. No warning, no apology, just red-rimmed eyes and a plastic grocery bag of old Tupperware in one hand. "I can't do it," she said. No greeting, just that. "They're impossible. Mom says the living room's too small. Dad complains my kids are noisy. They won't share a bathroom. They're fighting every day. It's like hosting a reality show for entitled seniors." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "They need help," she said. "Just a little money. Enough for a deposit. A rental. Something small." I looked at her like a puzzle I no longer felt obligated to solve. "You watched her get turned away on Christmas Eve and said nothing I said. That was your choice? This is mine." She blinked like she'd been slapped, then turned and walked away. No goodbyes, no last dig, just silence. The same kind I'd been practicing. 1 week later, I got a forwarded email from my lawyer. Janelle had officially removed our parents from her home. They were now tenants in a rundown duplex across town. 2 rooms, 1 working heater, a slanted front step that never quite let you forget you'd arrived. The kind of place you don't take pictures of. Their retirement was already thin. Pensions barely covered food and utilities. No more cruises, no more weekend wine tastings. Just space heaters and grocery discount bins. I didn't celebrate. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reality. About showing them what support actually looks like by removing it. They tried to spin their own version of the story, of course, claimed I'd blindsided them, that I was always cold, that I'd cut them off out of nowhere. But by then, I'd already mailed proof to every cousin, every uncle, every family friend who might be tempted to pick sides. Dates, receipts, screen-capped texts, legal documents. One cousin responded with just a single word. "Yikes." Another sent a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No tidal wave of support, no mass intervention, just quiet. The kind that makes you realize people might not have been fooled, but they'd been silent for convenience. 2 months later, Abby and I were on the porch sipping iced tea. It was warm, breezy, no plans, no performance. Just peace. "I don't miss them," she said out of nowhere. I didn't either. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened it. A single line. "Hope you're proud of what you've done." Delete. No pause, no second read. "They'll probably try again," Abby said casually. "They always do," I replied. "But not in the way they think. Not with the same power, not with the same weight. They said there wasn't room for her at the table. Now there's no room left for them in our lives. And honestly, it feels lighter this way. They removed her like she was a folding chair. I removed them like dead weight. That's not revenge. That's math. Subtraction. Balance. The only difference is this time I got to do the choosing. And I chose peace. 2 mornings after they moved out, I walked through the house for the last time. The new owners had closed fast, and I had exactly 1 hour to clear the last of the storage closet before handing off the keys. I didn't take much. Just a few photos Abby had painted as a kid, a set of dishes I'd forgotten I even bought, and a fleece throw I recognized as the one Mom always used but never thanked me for. The house smelled like dust and old resentment. I stood in the living room, the echo of their voices long gone, and felt nothing. Not sadness, not triumph, just quiet. My lawyer called that afternoon to say the check had cleared. Full payment, wired. I transferred half to Abby's college fund. The rest I tucked away in an account with only my name on it. For once, I didn't tell anyone what I planned to do with it. It wasn't theirs to ask. I didn't hear anything from my parents for 2 weeks. Then one afternoon, while I was restocking the trauma room, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. They left a voicemail. My dad. Slurred. Bitter. "Hope you're happy. We're freezing. You're a real piece of work, you know that I deleted it." A week later, Janelle called again. I picked up this time mostly out of curiosity. "They need help," she said without preamble. "They're sick, they're struggling, they're falling apart." "They were healthy enough to scream at my daughter on Christmas," I said. She made a frustrated noise. "You can't just cut off your own family. That's not how this works." "That's exactly how it works," I said. "When family forgets how to act like one, they lose the privileges that come with the title." "You're being vindictive," she snapped. "And you're being delusional. This is about money, isn't it?" she spat. "You want us to grovel. You want power." "No," I said. "I want space. From your noise, your guilt trips, your rewritten history. I want my daughter to grow up knowing she never has to tolerate people who treat her like a placeholder." Janelle was quiet for a second. Then she said, "You're heartless." "No," I replied. "I'm just finally done pretending." I hung up. That was the last time she called. 2 days later, a cousin forwarded me a group text. Janelle had sent it. "Kate's not well. She's spiraling. She needs help, but refuses it. She's punishing our parents for something that didn't even happen. Don't reach out, it only makes her worse." I stared at the screen, then set the phone down. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That night, Abby came home from school with a flyer. A summer science mentorship one she actually wanted. She hesitated, hovering by the table like she expected me to say no. "It's okay," she said quickly. "I know it's expensive. It's fine." I looked at her. "Abby," I said, "if it matters to you, it matters to me." Her eyes widened. "So, you're saying yes. I'm saying it's already covered," I said, pulling out the application fee receipt from my purse. "Sent it in last week." She blinked, then laughed, then hugged me with that kind of sudden force you only get when someone has been quietly bracing for rejection. It hit me all over again. How often she'd been tiptoeing through rooms, dimming herself to accommodate other people's shadows. Never again. 3 weeks later, the house sold officially. The buyers sent a thank you card, said they'd plant a garden in the backyard. I smiled at that. Maybe something good would grow there after all. My mom left a message that same day. I didn't listen to it. The transcription preview was enough. "You owe us." That was the subject line of her voice. Not apology, not regret, just that. You owe us. Like all the bills, all the favors, all the years of showing up were just down payments on endless loyalty. But loyalty is a two-way street, and I'd spent decades walking it alone. No more. I spent the next weekend cleaning out my home office, came across an old photo album, one of the few I hadn't scanned yet. Inside, pictures from Abby's 5th birthday. She was wearing a paper crown, holding a sparkler, grinning like the world couldn't touch her. My parents weren't in a single photo. They'd left early that day, had another event. Something more important, they'd said. I closed the album. I'd spent years carrying disappointment like it was inherited property passed down, renamed, love rebranded as family. But disappointment isn't love. And family doesn't treat your child like a burden. They don't make excuses when you're hurting. They don't need eviction notices to remember how to be human. The eviction letter my mother tore up. That was just a symbol. The real eviction happened long before, when she looked at Abby and said, "We didn't plan for you. They planned for everyone else. The neighbor, the cousins, the golden child, and her golden child. But not us. Not the ones who paid for the lights and kept the insurance active." That wasn't an oversight. It was a message, and I got it, loud and clear. So I sent one back. Not in words, in silence. In receipts, in the thud of a closing door that stayed shut. Because sometimes you don't get peace by forgiving people. Sometimes you get it by leaving. By choosing your kid over the people who made you one. That was my reckoning. Not a fight, not a scream, just a final tally. And an exit. Quiet. Legal. Complete. It's been 2 years. 2 entire Christmases have come and gone since the night my daughter made toast, while 28 relatives ate roast beef and laughed without her. I don't remember what they wore. I don't remember what they served. I just remember her sitting on that couch like a puzzle piece someone pretended didn't fit. People ask sometimes people who don't know the whole story whether I ever talked to them again, whether we made up, whether things got better. I usually smile and say, better isn't always backwards. And it's true. Life didn't snap into perfection the minute I sold the house and shut off the utilities. There were awkward phone calls from people trying to stay neutral. There were rumors, of course. Janelle made sure of that. She told anyone who'd listen that I was unstable, vindictive, borderline abusive. That I'd kicked our elderly parents into the street over a holiday misunderstanding. I didn't argue, I didn't post receipts, I didn't leak voicemails or tax records or any of the cold, clean proof I'd spent months compiling. I didn't have to. The people who mattered already knew. The ones who didn't weren't worth convincing. Funny thing happens when you stop chasing approval. The noise dies, and you finally get to hear yourself think. Abby got into her top choice college. Not because I pulled strings, not because I threw money at it, but because she earned it. She worked quietly, intentionally, with the kind of grace you only develop when you've spent years shrinking to fit into spaces never built for you. The money from the house sale helped. It covered tuition, sure, but it did more than that. It bought her freedom. A chance to choose what she loved without weighing it against someone else's crisis. It bought her a dorm room she decorated with plants and sticky notes that said things like, "You deserve to take up space." It bought me something too. A smaller house with bigger light, a home with no ghosts in the floorboards. I don't keep furniture that whispers. I don't answer unknown numbers anymore. I block them. My voicemail is a blank slate, and that's how I like it. Abby comes home on breaks, and we cook together. Nothing fancy, tacos, stir fry. Sometimes boxed mac and cheese just because. She tells me about her classes and her weird roommate who alphabetizes their socks. We laugh. We exist. Without performance. Without apology. One afternoon, she asked if I ever missed them. I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to answer honestly. I miss what I hoped they were, I said. I miss the idea of parents who showed up without making you feel like a receipt. But no, I don't miss them. She nodded. Me either. And just like that, the wound didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt like a scar. Healed. Sealed. A reminder, not a threat. Janelle moved again. Last I heard, she'd gone through 2 more rentals and a roommate situation that ended in small claims court. Our parents, her new house guests, lasted exactly 6 months with her. Then she gave them the same line I did, "I can't do this anymore." They tried to move in with a cousin who lives out of state. He said no. They ended up in a low-income senior facility with stained linoleum and a bus schedule taped to the fridge. They still call sometimes. Not me. Abby, she doesn't answer. She showed me one voicemail once just to see what I thought. My mother's voice, syrupy and strange, said, "It's been long enough. Don't punish us for a moment of miscommunication." Abby looked at me and said, "Miscommunication?" I laughed. "They didn't forget you, kiddo. They erased you." She nodded, deleted the message, and put her phone down like it weighed nothing. And that's when I knew we were free. Not just legally, not just physically, but emotionally, truly, finally, free. People like to talk about forgiveness like it's a finish line. Like once you cross it, everything resets. But I think forgiveness is just one path of many. I chose another one. I chose Abby. I chose the girl who showed up with cookies and a smile and got told there was no room at the table. I chose her future over their traditions, her dignity over their comfort, and I don't regret it. Not 1 second, not one step. This year, we spent Christmas in Italy. Just the 2 of us. No turkey, no drama, Just cappuccinos and cobblestone streets and gelato eaten in mittens. We walked through churches older than any grudge and lit a candle, not for the past, but for the peace that followed. We FaceTimed my husband, who was working a holiday shift like I used to. He smiled, eyes tired but happy. "Looks like you're finally resting," he said. I was. I am. This is what healing looks like. Not a grand finale, not a viral confession, just quiet dinners and shared glances and the kind of laughter that doesn't hide behind anything. I kept one thing from the old house, a garden stone Abby made in 5th grade. It says, "Grow where you are loved." I put it in the backyard under the lemon tree. Every time I see it, I remember who I'm doing this for. Not them, not the ones who couldn't make space for a kind girl at Christmas. I'm doing it for the kid who thought toast on a paper towel was enough, and the woman she's becoming. Who knows now, without doubt, without flinch, that she deserves more. And that more isn't something you beg for. It's something you build, brick by brick, choice by choice. And I built this. I did. So if you're reading this and wondering if I went too far, here's my answer. I didn't go far. I went home. And it turns out that's exactly where I was meant to be. Story 2. To show her love and appreciation. For my mother, my 19-year-old daughter spent 7 months creating a contemporary sculpture for her birthday. We discovered it in a trash can the next day. I didn't yell. This is what I did. I didn't begin my morning anticipating finding myself in a trash can 9 days later when my mother was yelling in terror. But what do you know? You're always surprised by life. It can occasionally be a surprise bouquet. Sometimes it's your child's artwork amid a pool of black banana peels and an oddly meat-colored substance. Can you guess which one I received? The day got off to a good start. Too good. That unnerving silence before things falls apart. You know, I had the innocent optimism of someone who still trusted reason and a common reality as I pulled into my mother's driveway. I was there to assist her in cleaning up after her celebration for her 65th birthday. The previous evening had been the party. Very little cake. A lot of art world, elegant, theatrical, and small chat. I hadn't lingered. For me, the biggest attraction had been my daughter Ivy. Her sculpture was covered like a relic when she arrived. She lived for 7 months. Her nerves are like live wires carved and sanded into shape. She handed it over with trembling hands, as I recall. She also handed a note to my mom, a sincere letter that expresses gratitude, admiration, and thanks for motivating me. There ought to have been a moment. It ought to have had some significance. However, the only item on display when I entered my mother's living room the following morning was a crayon drawing made by my nephew Noah, who is 10 years old. It featured a crooked house, a Jupiter-sized sun, and a stick figure that I thought was meant to be my grandmother. It was really framed, hanging at eye level behind glass. Isn't it endearing? When she noticed that I was staring at it, my mother said, "Bold," I answered. She smiled. His sense of form is so unadulterated. To be honest, it looked like raw chicken. Well, let's say the kid who wants to glue a stick is a budding artist. I tasted blood because I bit my tongue so hard. I spoke as casually as possible. Ivy's piece. Where do you put it? Mom did not flinch. Oh, I haven't decided where to put it yet. I've kept it somewhere secure for the time being. We had so much clutter last night, do you know? I grinned and nodded. Remained silent. Because if I said what I wanted to say, it would have involved phrases like, "Are you kidding me?" and "Where the hell is it?" And I was trying not to ruin things. I told myself it was fine. That Ivy sculpture was probably just wrapped up in bubble wrap waiting for its moment. And then I went to take out the trash. It was just one of those normal things you do at your mom's house. Grab a bag, head to the backyard, open the bin. I wish I could unsee what I saw next. There, half submerged in moldy lettuce and something pink that might have once been shrimp, was a jagged edge of gray clay. It had this curve I recognized instantly, because I'd seen Ivy mold that curve over and over again with her hands smoothing it until it practically breathed. My blood ran cold, but no way. I dropped the trash bag, walked closer, opened the lid all the way. And there was the sculpture. Ivy's sculpture crushed between an empty champagne bottle and a torn paper plate soaked in grease. I went cold. I know people say that sometimes, but I really did. My body stopped working. My mind couldn't catch up. Then my heart started pounding. A horrible animal kind of pounding, because all I could think was, Ivy can't see this. He can never see this. She gave her heart to my mother, and my mother threw it in the trash. Literally, I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All I knew was I had to get it out. I reached in, but the sculpture was heavy, awkward, buried under layers of trash. I tugged, but it wouldn't budge. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I climbed into the bin. Let me be clear. I'm a grown woman. I have a career. I pay taxes. I use hyaluronic acid. And I was up to my knees in garbage juice trying to rescue my daughter's soul. The stench was immediate and violent, like fermented betrayal with a top note of expired salmon. I didn't care. I dug down, gritting my teeth, balancing awkwardly as I reached the base of the sculpture. It was smeared in food and something sticky. I didn't want to investigate, but I had it. I had it in my arms. That's when I heard it. Laughter. I turned my head, and there he was, Noah, standing 10 feet away with his phone up filming, and he's in the trash. He exclaimed, "See, she's in the actual trash." I attempted to tell him to stop. "Noah, don't just put the phone down too late." He was already yelling inside the house. "Mom, Granny, come see this." I was ready to bake him when I heard a vehicle door bang. Ivy. Ivy had just pulled up. I panicked, held the sculpture to my breast, and attempted to stoop down as if somehow hiding in the garbage would make me invisible. Ivy rounded the corner, wincing at the sounds. She halted when she spotted me. Then her gaze lowered to what I was carrying. "Is that—" I stood transfixed, covered in rubbish clay in my arms. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. "It's not what it looks like," I stated in a pitiful and worthless manner. Ivy took a step forward. She had a pallid face. Did Grandma discard it? Her little voice gave the impression that she already knew the answer, but only needed someone who wouldn't tell her to tell it to her. Additionally, I was unable to talk because doing so might further hurt her. I stood in the dumpster by alone, holding on to what was left of her heart as she blinked, hard, turned, walked back to her car, got in, and drove off. That night, I didn't go searching for past wounds. I simply wanted to wash the clay off my hands, clean the trash stink off my skin, and maybe act like nothing had occurred till dawn. However, when I arrived, Ivy was already at home. Faceless, she was ejected by the door. She didn't inquire as to whether I had kept the sculpture. She asked me no questions. She simply went right by me to her studio and closed the door. What was left of her heart was in my arms as I stood there. It took 7 months to shape, sand, and sculpt, and I was at a loss for what to do for the first time in a long time. So when I felt powerless, I did what I normally do. I did some cleaning. I washed away every food stain and remnant of damp cardboard. I gave it a cautious try. After putting it back on her workstation, I sat down in the hallway outside her door and spent a considerable amount of time staring at nothing. As I sat there, I reflected on how we always end up where we are, and the older sister who is actually 5 years older. And for the most of my early years, I felt like an unintentional interruption to my parents' narrative, something that occurred between modeling jobs and financial advancements. Our father was a finance professional, senior-level material. We were wealthy. Not a lot of money, but enough to keep our refrigerator from buzzing. My mother could discover herself without ever worrying about the energy bill, and our house always looked like it belonged in a magazine. He had just returned home. Long hours, many trips. The type of man who claimed to be bonding with you by purchasing an expensive doll from an airport gift shop. Being the earner, however, never bothered him. That was his specialty. Supplier, customs values, etc. In contrast, my mother Judith was always embarking on a fresh, personal reinvention journey. She was a model first, but not the runway kind. More of the local commercial type and catalog. She was stunning. Even at 65, it still is. It's the type of beauty that stops people in their tracks. And it was plenty for her for a time, until it wasn't. Her words, not mine, when she reached full figure for the industry. She changed her career path. Joined the Art Appreciators Club, a term that has become lukewarm, became an art critic, launched a blog, and reviewed galleries. In July, our home became a revolving door of friends' art people wearing scarves and viewpoints on negative space. Dad smiled, nodded, and kept the lights on, even though he didn't understand. I frequently pondered if my mother loved him or whether she simply valued the financial independence he provided, allowing her to become whatever she needed to be during that decade. Daniela, my sister, followed. 5 years younger. The miraculous baby, the golden kid. The one with sparkle in her feet, dimples, and volume. I convinced myself that since she was the baby, things would ultimately level out, and that being quiet, helpful, and responsible would eventually pay off. It didn't, spoiler alert. Mom would describe Daniela's tantrums in the middle of the Guggenheim as an early indication of expressive energy. I was once suspended for using a towel to wipe my hands rather than letting them air dry, because you don't know how cloth affects paint's oils. However, I accepted it. The elder one was me. I persevered. I do it. Things changed after my dad retired. Not as you could have hoped. The lifestyle did not slow down, but the money did. Mom wasn't going to change. Rather, I discovered that I was progressively taking on more responsibility. It began modestly covering the expense of the holidays. Sometimes I'm paying a bill. Then it grew larger. Medical-related items, airplanes, their yearly artist retreat in New Mexico. Nobody directly asked. They didn't have to. I also never refused. Then came Ivy, my daughter, my heart, my hub. And she drew as soon as she could hold a pencil. Forms, darkness, individuals, creatures. Texture and lines were her life. I never encouraged her to pursue art. She already had it in her bones. Naturally, Mom noticed. I was appreciative that he took Ivy to museums to start, gave her books on modernism and sculpture, and introduced her to her art friends. For a while, I firmly thought that things would be different and that Ivy would receive something that I was never given. It wasn't different, though. Ivy didn't notice the favoritism, which made it worse. Her grandmother complimented her, but she didn't sense the ice. She referred to it as honesty. She isn't cruel. She simply doesn't sugarcoat things, Ivy would say. That is something I adore about her. She expects a lot from me. She sincerely thought that if she put in enough effort and produced something good enough, she would be able to win her grandmother's approval. And she did just that for 7 months. She poured herself into it and sculpted, skipped excursions, remained up late, rejected her own work's early drafts with professionalism. She aimed to produce something deserving, something more than not bad, that would cause my mother to pause and say something. Carefully wrapping it, she pushed it over herself. He added a letter as well. I witnessed her writing it, folding it, tucking it in. She didn't show it to me, but I saw the expression on her face when she sealed the envelope, like she was putting a little piece of her soul in there, like it mattered. At the party, she waited until the right moment, quietly presented her gift. My mother unwrapped it, looked at it for a long moment, and said, "It's good." That was it. No smile, no follow-up, no. "This part is interesting." Or "You've grown so much that it's good." Ivy smiled, nodded, said thank you. But later that night, as we got in the car, she asked, "Do you think she liked it?" I asked what she meant. She said it was good, but not very good. Do you think she meant it as a B+ or just a B? She wasn't joking. She was evaluating the tone, the tempo, the angle of my mom's grin. Like her granny was some kind of art world sphinx. And I've simply got to answer the mystery to gain her devotion. She didn't say very. So maybe she believes it needs improving. Or maybe that's simply her way of expressing she enjoyed it. What do you think? I felt like screaming. I wanted to tell her that Judith wasn't a critic. She was a narcissist in pearls. That no amount of perfection would ever be adequate. That it's good was probably the finest compliment she was ever going to get. But I couldn't. Not yet. So I just told her I was proud of her thought the art was great. She gave a nod. Silent for a time. She went on to say that if she didn't like it, she wouldn't lie. She would say that. I also gave a nod. However, something broke in my chest because her words lacked kindness. Polished to sound neutral, it was dismissal. How long I sat outside Ivy's door is a mystery to me. Long enough for my back to start hurting in that specific manner that makes you realize that your 20s are certainly finished, and long enough for the hallway light to flicker. Now she had the sculpture in her studio. As clean as possible, or as clean as I could get. Between two sketchbooks, the second letter flattened. When I placed them there, I remained silent. What should I have said? Apologies. Your love was handled like compost by Grandma. After a while, I got up and brewed some tea. I abstained from alcohol. Like I was waiting for a storm I could control, I gazed out the kitchen window. After midnight, she emerged, remained silent, ignored me, simply strolled into the studio, stood before the artwork gazing at it as if it had deceived her, which it had in a sense. Then she noticed the letter as she looked down. She only muttered, not picking it up. She also tossed that away. I gave a nod. She didn't weep. Instead of screaming, she turned and begged in the tiniest voice why she would harm me. Because she never sees you the way you see her, or because she's a mother, or because some people can't love anything that doesn't reflect them back like a mirror. I wanted to express that. However, I said, I don't know, because anything else would have sounded like an excuse at that moment. After giving one nod, I walked out of the room. I think the sound of her bedroom door clicking shut sounded like a gate being slammed. Ivy had poured herself into the sculpture's shapes, and I gazed at it. Buried behind someone else's ego, she had suffered through 7 months of labor. Now a fresh idea slowly and icily emerged. This misery is going to consume her if she does nothing about it. So I went out. I visited the art supplies store that is open 24/7. They are real. Spray paint is typically plagued by guys and teens who think it's a philosophy. I entered on a mission with a basket. Brushes, canvases, acrylics, tools for carving using charcoal, clay, sufficient materials to reconstruct the Sistine Chapel during a thunderstorm. The clerk's eyebrow went up. Establishing a school. No, a war, I responded. Ivy wasn't out by the time I came home. I didn't knock. Simply arrange everything in her studio. No speeches. There is no pressure. All of the tools were arranged like an invitation. It was about midday when I left the door open. It opened with a squeak. Ivy was still dressed from yesterday. She has dark circles beneath her eyes. Unreadable expression. After standing at the doorway for a while, she entered quietly, closed the door after her. I heard the first brush strike the canvas 10 minutes later. After that, clay was thrown onto the table. Then there was a lengthy pause, followed by the abrupt sound of something splitting. Then there's additional work. Then there was yet more quiet. I didn't interrupt, failed to check in. I sat in the kitchen and drank a cup of tea that I never touched again. She was still awake the following morning. Gently, I opened the door. She was crouching next to the statue, paint-covered hands. The hair was secured with what seemed to be a shoelace. I glanced at the sculpture and its transformation, but she didn't look at me. The piece wasn't the same. She had pounded a portion of it in with her fists, rearranged it, and busted it open. Next, used bits of ripped sketch paper, plaster, and color to fill in the spaces. Now it included violence, sincerity. The letter was embedded, torn, and rearranged all over the place. Fragments were still readable. I cherish you. I appreciate you constantly seeing me. I wanted this to have some significance. Then I noticed the screen, a silent video repeating on a tiny digital frame. I leaned in. Was I in the garbage, buried knee-deep in trash, pulling the sculpture out, shirt soiled, face strained, her both hands clutching her heart, my chest constricted. "Where did you purchase this? I've already seen it." Without looking up, she said, "It was uploaded by Noah." In the cousins group chat, I blinked, claimed it was amusing. Dumpster diving for trash art is what Aunt Helen does. My jaw tightened and did the others. They chuckled. She used her sleeve to wipe her face. One of them underlined it with a raccoon emoji. I remained silent for a long moment before asking, "You utilized it then?" He gave a shrug. "I might as well include it in the work since everyone is going to make fun of me." I took a step back and gazed at her, the work and the pieces of a girl who was trying to make meaning of rejection. No, we're not going to let this die in a family group chat, I thought. I hired a gallery that afternoon. It was a little grimy space downtown that had once been a mechanic's garage and still had a slight oil odor. Excellent. I personally took the artwork in, placed it in a neutrally lit spot, and just displayed the sculpture, the broken letters, and the looping video of myself in the trash can on the walls. A three-dimensional narrative. Ivy's jaw fell wide when she saw it when she went in. "I can, but you can't prove it. It was not intended for you to." She tossed it aside. Calmly, I responded, "We're not hiding it." Her gaze strayed to the TV and the sculpture. "It's intimate." "That's right." She didn't say anything. Then she added, "I'm just tired," without anger. What if it's not understood? I told them they didn't have to. All they need to do is see it. I made some calls that night. I hadn't spoken to critics in years. Friends of friends. Someone like Duluth once evaluated a sidewalk chalk display. I related the tale to them, told them about it. I've informed them about my mother. Most didn't answer. One did. After seeing the artwork again the next morning without saying anything, he turned to face Ivy and remarked, "This belongs in our next show." She blinked. "Really?" He gave a nod. People need to experience emotions once more. There's something about this. Ivy looked at me in disbelief as he walked away. "What did you do?" I gave a shrug. I removed the rubbish. 4 days later, the concert took place. A shared group show in a downtown location with broken concrete and a coffee maker was all that was elegant. Older than myself. But there were a lot of people in the room. Actual persons. Not only art students with mysterious tattoos and tote bags, real critics collectors, and a lady who used the word visceral. I counted how many times they didn't simply look at Ivy's sculpture. They came to a halt, remained motionless before it, and gazed at the screen repeatedly as the bits of torn leather were placed into the clay. Some of them sobbed. A lady muttered. I scrawled something in a notepad as if she had just seen God after feeling something in my gut. 3 emails inquiring about commissions were received by the end of the evening. Ivy was given a card by a man who stated he managed a residence for up-and-coming artists. A serious collector offered $14,000 in cash with no conditions. Ivy turned to me and asked, "What do I do?" after staring at the number as if it were written in a foreign language. "You wait," I said. She blinked. "Why?" "Because there is still more to the story. The artwork was not sold by us. Not quite yet." However, news got out more quickly than any of us anticipated. Blocks featured pictures from the show. A video loop of the artwork was tweeted along with a message. This was more painful than I had anticipated. Then everything was revealed in a thread. How Ivy's sculpture was discarded by her granny. How her mother got into the trash can to retrieve it. How the family silently collapsed behind the sculpture, which now resided in a gallery. Nothing was posted by us. We didn't need to. As usual, the internet did what it does. It lighted the match after filling in the blanks and connecting the dots. The story of how a grandmother's trash became a $14,000 masterpiece began with a headline critic or coward. She then referred to the subheading as good. It was referred to be transcending in the art world. No exact quotations, no names. However, they didn't require names. Who they were referring to was obvious to anyone who had spent more than 5 minutes looking through our family tree following Mom's blog or read her opinion piece in that expensive quarterly gallery magazine. The self-appointed oracle of the art world, my mother once informed me that my wedding centerpiece was visually agitated. Now, since she couldn't even display the most basic human kindness, she was a meme. She was referred to in one piece as the grandma who couldn't identify brilliance if it were standing in her driveway crying. Ivy, the artist of refuse, is another. When someone texted to apologize for the incident, I didn't change the spelling for once. Family members, art friends, and even complete strangers who recognized Mom from a gallery event 10 years prior began calling to apologize. People questioned if it was faked or authentic. I knew the storm was coming if it was an artistic attempt. It came 2 days later. At my front door are my parents, as if wearing a silk scarf and beige pants on a judgment day. I took a while to respond. I gave them 3 chances to ring the bell. I then slightly opened it to let them know that it was still my home. Still, Mom rushed in. Dad went after it. He did, of course. She was furious, the type of fury that made her cheeks tight-lipped. That meant I was going to be accused of posing as Ria's dining chairs without her consent, which was a betrayal somewhat smaller than murder. "This needs to be fixed," she yelled. I rested my weight on the doorframe. "You two have a good morning." On my table, she tossed a copy of the Journal of Visual Culture. The cover featured Ivy's sculpture in bold. "Truth is the wounded object. They're accusing me of being cold-hearted." She said, "I'm being referred to as unimportant. As I mentioned earlier, one of those is subjective." She didn't chuckle. Like he was going to attempt diplomacy. Dad cleared his throat. Mom interrupted him with a raised hand as he opened his mouth. "You're going to publicly admit that there was a miscommunication. I never threw away the garbage container despite her command that it was symbolic, that Ivy and I worked together to plan it." I blinked. "Hold on, are you asking me to tell a lie, or are you now also lying to yourself?" She winced, recovered. With her eyes sparkling, she said that it was a critiquing exercise, a challenge to the arts. I was leading her. I always thought she had talent. I took a moment to consider that. Simply dangle in midair like a ruined perfume. Then I added, "Mom, you inspired her by keeping her artwork. You didn't believe it was important, so you threw it away." She fell silent. That fleeting, perilous silence. "Then I'm being left out." "Excellent. The mortgage is beyond our means." Silently, Dad said, "Yes, there was." I gave him a glance. "That is no longer an issue for me." He blinked. "You have been assisting for many years." "Yes," I said. "The soul of my daughter was then thrown into a garbage bin by your wife." So I paused. Mom approached me as if she were about to give a long speech, but I got there before her. "A press release is what you want." "This one," I interrupted you. "In terms of money, on an emotional level, in a legal sense if necessary. You made this decision." She snarled. "You're punishing us." "I'm simply done acting like you didn't hurt yourself," I said. Before she could answer, I closed the door. And I didn't feel bad about it for the first time in my adult life. A week later, Ivy's sculpture received invitations to 2 group exhibitions, one in Berlin and another in New York. Then, someone requested if she could create a scream loop and a limited print series of the embedded fragments. Her second year of college wasn't even over yet. The offer of $14,000 was declined. A collector eventually purchased it for $32,000 and described it as the most emotionally honest work of art created by a person under 25 that he had ever seen. It doesn't really matter if you didn't believe. However, she resumed eating, sleeping, and drawing things purely out of want. My sister Daniela sent us the legal notification right when I believed everything could be settled. Her email, of course, resembled a trivial PowerPoint presentation. According to her, Ivy's use of the footage in the sculpture was her son Noah's intellectual property. She was requesting a retroactive 30% of the revenues. As his legal guardian, this is my favorite line. I have a duty to defend his creative rights. I was halfway through laughing when my mother gave me the second one, stating that we had joint ownership of the sculpture since it reflected their love and that no work of art is created in a vacuum. She maintained that the work would not exist without her and that she was an unneeded spark. That was something I intended to frame and display in a gallery called Narcissist in Natural Light. Thus, we hired a lawyer. Ivy sobbed the night we sent the response, not out of fear, but rather because it felt like such a deliberate betrayal, as if they hadn't simply thrown away her labor. Since the wreckage didn't survive long, they were attempting to make money out of it. In a group chat with 16 family members, Noah had uploaded the video himself. No limitations, no copyright notice, and no watermark. Just the description and a blurry video of myself in the garbage. In fact, my aunt is currently in the garbage. Danielle's attorney attempted to claim that it was still his property. Sure, ours said, but Ivy didn't take it. She incorporated it into a bigger, more transforming piece of art. It's a remark. It's an expression of feeling. It's fair usage. The judge threw the entire thing in the trash as if it belonged in the same bin I climbed out of after agreeing that it was art and not infringement. Before Daniel's case ever got off the ground, it fell apart. The judge just had one question for Mom. Did you intentionally discard the sculpture and letter that belonged to your granddaughter? He made another attempt to twist it. I referred to it as performance art and an implicit teaching strategy. She was interrupted by the court, who said that Ivy's work was obviously transformational and personal, and that whatever inspiration she may have given was accidental emotional harm rather than creative cooperation. Ivy will receive 100% of the revenues and rights. No appeals. There are no delays. The following day, it hit the blocks. ArtNet. Extremely allergic. A few breakdowns on TikTok. The grandma who attempted to have her copyright rejected was featured in a news article that caught our attention. Danielle stopped answering the phone. Mom fell quiet. She's back in the studio working on something new, Ivy, although her blog hasn't been updated in a while. This time, no scraps, no screens, her hands alone in the clay. She gave me a smile when I last peered in, an actual one. Not appreciative, not looking for validation, simply be there. This may be the most extreme art of all, in our opinion. 3 years have passed. Ivy received awards upon graduating. She now has her own studio pupils and a calendar full with commissions as a professional artist. At the same college that used to frighten her, she now works as a part-time teacher. It seems that someone who has experienced more than a criticism circle is too strong for fear. Word gets around even if neither Daniel nor my parents speak to us directly. The large home was sold, moved to the suburbs, and downsized to something modest. Mom was seen working part-time at a gift shop at a gallery, postcards folded next to prints of the artists she used to review. It's poetic. And we were all right. It's better than fine. Tell me, nevertheless, if I went far enough or too far. Tell me in the comments below. Remember to press the bell and subscribe if you would want to see more tales like this one story. 3. We have determined that you are no longer family. After my daughter traveled 5 hours to attend their wedding anniversary, my mother spoke to her. She was not even let inside. I didn't shout. This is what I did. After half an hour, they were yelling in fear. Let's retreat. It was just a short distance to the area where I stood beneath a faux hydrangea-adorned archway. For the 6th time in 10 minutes, I'm scanning the driveway. I tried to act like I was at ease. Our youngest was fighting with my husband about whether or not she could take off her shoes as he held 2 half-empty paper cups of tepid punch and muttered. My kid was acting as though he wasn't with us by leaning against a folding chair in that preteen pose. I was looking at the time once more. I said, "She's cutting it close." The aircraft could have been delayed. Drinking the world's least festive beverage, Graham suggested. I nodded, but my stomach was already experiencing the sensation of simultaneously being lighter and heavier. 3 weeks prior, Evelyn had chosen her dress and had it dry cleaned, which is a complete act of love for a college student. Her carry-on even had a little gift bag. She engraved a picture frame of some sort herself. She was scheduled to touch down shortly before noon. At 2, the ceremony took place. She vowed to take an Uber right out of the airport. "Mom, I'll be there," she said. "Today is their big day. Yes, it's their big day." By 2:11, I was checking my phone every 20 seconds and perspiring through my sleeveless outfit. No missed calls. No messages. Evelyn, no. Instead of holding a vow renewal, I discovered my mom near the back patio placing candles as if she were directing a movie. That was how her hair was put up. I always thought of ancient soap operas when I saw that. As if someone could try to take the vows and modify them, my dad was standing next to her clutching a clipboard. "Hello." I forced a grin as I said, "Can we wait another few minutes? I understand that it's late. Evelyn hasn't arrived yet. I guess she's just around the bend." My mother, as composed as a librarian, turned to face me. "She was here, I see." I blinked. "What?" She wiped a non-existent speck off the tablecloth and added, "She came early. I believe it was just before noon. What else do you do when the earth tilts?" That's why I laughed. "Then where is she? Does she have a home?" As though he had been waiting for his cue, my dad added his voice. We informed her that her being here today was inappropriate. The words were incomprehensible. "I apologize." "What?" "She doesn't truly belong to the family. According to my mother, the fabric was improved by smoothing it in that way. Not in the same manner. Not in the same manner." I gazed at her, anticipating the usual wink, smirk, or other reaction. "Calm down. I'm joking. That was never the case. What on earth are you discussing?" I spoke in a thin, edge-cracking voice. She got it. When my dad stated that he cemented the deal by folding his arms, she remained silent. She was really courteous. She was polite because she was. Even though she was crushed, Evelyn had always been too calm, too nice, and too determined not to upset anyone. I was no longer even able to feel my legs. "You ignored her," slowly I said. "She spent 5 hours in the air. She purchased the ticket on her own. For this, she didn't attend her roommate's birthday. How about you?" By that, we meant nothing. We just wanted to keep things simple, according to my mom. Close. Indeed, there were 87 individuals on the RSVP list. Close. Graham, knowing something was wrong, approached me from behind. I looked at him, then at my children, and finally at my parents again. I didn't shout. Something inside of me cracked, like the thinnest wire finally giving out, yet I didn't weep. I said, "We're going out." "What?" My mother's eyes grew wide. "Don't be theatrical, Moira." I didn't respond. I just leaned down and instructed the children to get their belongings. Graham understood right away. He nodded, dropped the drink, and picked up the bags. We left without saying a word. I didn't turn around. The air outside was a punishment. Warm, sticky, unforgiving. I tried Evelyn again, and my hands trembled, directly to voicemail. I attempted texting. Nothing. Then I simply stood beside the car, holding on to the phone as if it would offer me an explanation. Graham came to stand next to me after opening the passenger door for the children. He claimed she would call. He didn't have to, since I received a message 5 minutes later. Just a basic one. "Now are you free?" I gave her a call back right away. After 2 rings, she answered. "Hello." My voice became stuck in my throat as I spoke. "You're where?" she replied. "I'm fine." But her tone wasn't. It wasn't big. I didn't want to ruin anything, so I frowned. "Nothing I said was ruined by you." They did. They said, "They have determined that I am no longer family." Our quiet wasn't meaningless. It had a burden. She went on, "I didn't want to tell you. Not at the event. I thought you should be able to appreciate it." My palm tightened around the phone as I gulped. "You're where there's a cafe nearby. There wasn't really somewhere else I could go." We are on our way to you." The automobile was already started by Graham. I didn't shout. Although I didn't shout, my parents were yelling in terror half an hour after I pulled out my phone, opened a folder, and made a call. They were absolutely astonished, I thought. Like all parents, not flawless, a bit direct and traditional. This is the type of person who would miss a birthday, then give them $20 and say, "Now you can get yourself something you desire." They weren't mean, though. I didn't think so, at least not until I heard my daughter say the same thing to me once half a lifetime ago. "I'm not really family," they said. All of a sudden, everything fell into place. I was the middle child growing up. The position is familiar to you. Old enough to be held accountable. Too young to be taken seriously. Too old to be attractive, yet too young to be responsible. The achiever was Colin, my elder brother. Ruth, my younger sister, was the infant. The fuller child was me, the spacing system. The person who filled in the blanks in family portraits without significantly altering the composition. At first, it wasn't clear. Simple stuff. Ruth would receive handcrafted glittery cards on her birthday. Colin would receive a personalized cake featuring the logo of his preferred football team. The grocery store once gave me a single-layer sheet cake that had the incorrect name on it. "Oh, where it's just cake," I said when I pointed it out. "Give up being challenging." I had become familiar with a phrase, but it wasn't just cake. It was never simply anything. I was around 12 or 13 at the time. "You made a new friend, Maya," when they first said it. She talked about getting a tattoo, had black nail polish, and was noisy. She was disliked by my parents. Even more, she hated her parents. What sort of family that is unknown to us. Rather than raising an adolescent girl who enjoyed eyeliner, my mother had muttered as if they were hiding weapons. Still, I continued to hang out with her. The house was deserted when I woke up one Saturday. I thought they'd gone out for groceries. Spoiler, they had not. They'd gone to the amusement park when we planned to visit for weeks. I wasn't invited when I asked why. Later, through tears after Ruth accidentally let it slip, my mom laughed and said, "We just felt like you weren't really part of the family that day." And everyone laughed. Even Ruth, even Colin, because it was just a joke. A few hours later, when I sat at the dinner table with swollen eyes and a plate of leftover hot dogs, I asked if she meant it. "Oh, Moira, of course not." She said, "But honestly, if you're going to act like this over a silly joke, maybe it's time you reevaluate your behavior." She told me I'd embarrassed myself, that I should think about how I made them feel. So I apologized. And for years, I thought I'd overreacted. I thought I deserved it. Fast forward. I met my first husband when I was 22. His name was Aaron. He grew up in the foster system, bounced around a lot, but he was steady, of the kind of man who fixed your broken chair before you even asked, and knew how to cook. Actual food that didn't come out of a box. My parents hated him. "Where's his family?" My dad had asked over dinner the first time we brought Aaron home. "He doesn't have any," I said. My mom tilted her head like a curious bird. "That's so sad." Sad to them meant suspicious. They never said it outright, but it was clear they didn't think he belonged. He wasn't our kind. He was soft-spoken, worked with his hands, and didn't have a degree from a shiny school. What he did have was heart, which apparently wasn't enough. When we got married, my mom said, "Just promise me one thing. You won't expect us to pretend this is a good idea." I said nothing. Mostly because I had no idea how to answer that without flipping a table. They did come to the wedding, but they brought energy like they were attending a funeral. When Evelyn was born, everything softened for me anyway. For them, not so much. She looked like Aaron. Big brown eyes, expressive eyebrows, quiet curiosity. She didn't cry much as a baby, didn't demand anything, just watched. Thoughtful from day one. My parents kept her at arm's length. They didn't say it, they didn't have to. One Christmas, they brought all the grandkids personalized ornaments. Evelyn's was generic store bought with joy in block letters. Not her name, just joy. My mom actually said, well, we weren't sure what she was into. She was for what she was into with stickers and grilled cheese. But okay, I tried talking to them about it once. My mom told me not to read into everything. My dad said I was always trying to find fault. Eventually, I stopped asking. Years later, Aaron and I divorced. It wasn't dramatic. We just changed. He moved to a different city. Still visits Evelyn regularly. We co-parent well better than some couples I know who are still married. My parents, you'd think they'd want a war. Well, my mom had said, sipping her tea, I suppose we all make mistakes, but you've really grown from it. Then I met Graham, my now husband. Steady, funny middle class from the right kind of town. Went to college. Wears polos unironically. My parents loved him on sight. We're so proud of you, my dad had said at dinner one night. You truly turned your life around. I almost spat up my drink, turned my life around like Evelyn was part of a detour I wasn't intended to take. It became evident over time Evelyn's half-siblings got actual attention. True presence, true warmth. She got courteous smiles and last-minute invitations. Sometimes I noticed her noticing, but she never said anything. She merely wrapped her sentiments nicely and put them on a shelf someplace. Ruth, my sister, started to alter after she had kids of her own. She started noticing things the way our parents always leaned on me, always dismissed me. She apologized gently. She started phoning me more, inviting me to activities, offering babysitting help without waiting for me to ask. It wasn't fair, she stated once. The way they treated you growing up, I see it now. We didn't talk about it frequently, but I knew she noticed it. That had significance. Conversely, Colin remains the golden boy. He was a financial professional, and his wife described herself as sophisticated in her vows, and took our parents' side in every matter. They're elderly, once he said. Simply accept them for who they are. Yes, and I might let a raccoon dwell in my car the next time, due to the chilly weather. On the occasion of my parents' anniversary, they said they were renewing their vows. Each of the 3 siblings was urged to make an equal contribution. I made my payment. Photos were sent in for the slideshow. Assist with the playlist. The group email included Evelyn. She was thrilled. I allowed myself to hope that this time would be different. Perhaps they were gentler now that they were older. Are you prepared to distinguish between punishment and parenting? Perhaps they treat each grandchild in the same way. Perhaps. They turned her away after that. Ruth sounded exhausted when I called her from the vehicle. She was their weight. She couldn't make it, they informed me. They lied, I said. For a moment, Ruth was silent. That's Moira. That is repulsive. They informed her that she was not related. I heard her say that, word for word. Ruth let out a slow breath. I am at a loss for words, I responded. You don't have to. All I wanted was for you to know. She took a while to answer. Her voice was low as she spoke. Let me speak with James. We'll find a solution. That's when it hit me. So I hung up and looked out the windshield. This treachery was not new. It was a rerun. And I wasn't the one who apologized this time. I didn't talk to anyone in the automobile. Correct. Graham didn't either. Sitting silently in the back car, the children watched a tablet at a volume that was too low to hear. The quietness was unsettling, akin to the quiet following a building fall. Even if you don't know what occurred, you can tell that nothing looks the same. In front of 80 people, I had left my parents' wedding anniversary collection that we had as a family. Add or subtract a few former neighbors and coworkers. Without turning around, we got up, gathered our belongings, and walked away. I asked myself the same thing again and over. What did I do? And the response was always shifting. So you first skipped your folks' special day. No, you were right. However, what sort of daughter would do that? And lastly, a woman with her own daughter. Evelyn was sitting by the window, with her hands encircling a mug of what had likely gone cold when we arrived at the cafe. She blinked and stood slowly, as if she wasn't sure we were real, after looking up. She had dry red eyes. Hello, she said, as if she hadn't been excluded from her grandparents' lives. Before I could stop myself, I gave her a hug, and not the courteous kind. I didn't pull away when I crushed her. We placed an order for fries, a couple of drinks. No one ate. Before my phone buzzed, I'm not sure how long we sat like that. Not even the screen was checked by me. I simply knew. "Who is it?" Graham inquired tactfully. "Hello, sir." I said, "Let's get started." I took it up. "Moira, what the devil?" "Hello, Colin. At Mom and Dad's anniversary, you just departed. Are you going completely crazy?" At the door, Evelyn was turned away. "She is exaggerating. You are aware of her personality." "Colin, no." "I am aware of their behavior." He gave a loud sneer. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "This is insane. You are blowing up decades of family tradition over some misunderstanding." She spent 5 hours in the air. They informed her that she was not related. Colin kept going. "Do you have any idea what you've done to Mom, to Dad? They're devastated. They were in tears." "Good." That stunned him into silence. "Then you've lost your mind. You're trying to wreck this family, Colin," I said quietly. "If one person destroys your big day, it wasn't a big day. It was a performance." I hung up mid-rage. My hand was shaking. Evelyn leaned over and placed her fingers lightly on my. Just a little touch. I gazed at her. She didn't say anything, but this time it was Mom. Graham grabbed for the phone. "Don't," he said quietly. "I have to," I responded. "I have no idea what you believe you are doing." Mom gave a hiss. "However, you are making us seem bad in front of everyone we know. Before slamming the door in your granddaughter's face, perhaps you need to have considered that." The door was not slammed. "Be less theatrical." "Correct," I said. After telling her she wasn't family, you simply watched her leave. A pause occurred. Then came the guilt trip. "Your point has been made. Now return. Not anymore. Avoid doing this. Your parents' anniversary is today. People are posing inquiries. They certainly are." Her tone became piercing. "We're being humiliated by you. That's what you stated already. Ruth is also going." "What were your words to her?" I ended the call. Ruth sent a text message 2 minutes later. "We're heading out." 2. For Graham, I held up the screen. His eyebrows went up. Evelyn leaned closer. "It wasn't just me," I said. There were others besides us. It truly hit me at that point. What it meant, not simply what we had done. We weren't silent. It was not swallowed by us. We chuckled. We stood up and told them that this was unacceptable. No more. Ruth and her husband arrived at the cafe with their children 10 minutes later. They resembled us. Astonished, weary, unmoored a little. 2 tables were pushed together. Nobody spoke. The waitress gave us the look of someone who had just ejected us from a funeral, which we had in a sense. I saw Evelyn wipe ketchup off her young cousin's chin with a handkerchief. "Come on, there. I never had the opportunity to be that sort of big sister. I've never handled this as well as she is," I whispered. Ruth's eyebrows went up. Better than my phone, I thought. Buzzed once more. My cousin Marla, who was still there at the location, sent me a message this time. "It's a mess." The screen froze when Colin attempted to launch the slideshow. "Individuals are departing. According to your mother, it was all a misunderstanding." During appetizers, into the microphone. I gave Ruth the phone. Snorting into her drink, she read it. While the rest of the world whirled in the aftermath of our uprising, we sat back silent and still. Ruth said, "I keep waiting for someone to fix it." I gave her a glance. "We are always the ones who repair things." She gave a nod. And this time we didn't. I gazed out the window while leaning back. The cafe awning's edge flapped in a breeze. As they passed, a couple was holding hands and joking about something personal and unrelated. Their beautiful day was not ruined by us. Nearly to myself, I said, "They did." Later that evening, I received another update. Nevertheless, they carried out the vow renewal. Some stayed, mostly those who were too involved in the open bar or too courteous to go. Half of the front rows were vacant. There was applause as they shared a kiss. Not passionate clapping, not happy clapping. The applause you hear as someone wraps up a slideshow on their Utah vacation. Extremely, extremely quiet, awkward, and required. 3 days had passed, just long enough for the quiet to become loud. Long enough for everyone to act as if nothing had occurred until the money arrived, and long enough for the bills to begin arriving in inboxes. I had remained silent, nor to Colin nor to my folks, not even to Ruth, who just once contacted me to inquire. "Actually, we're not paying," I answered. That's right. There had been no payment for the vow renewal, only a portion of it. A champagne wall, a traveling violinist, and a wedding planner who supposedly used the phrase statement florals without sarcasm were all part of my parents' insistence that this time be done well. A third was supposed to be covered by each of us, Colin, Ruth, and I. Now that the calculations had changed, Colin was only going to realize that the voicemail had arrived at 7:42 a.m. Not even coffee had hit my system yet. What the devil is this, Moira? Do you really believe that you will just avoid paying the bill? We came to a family consensus. You don't have the right to act out and leave Mom and Dad's special day, then give me the fucking bills. After pausing, he continued, "Adult up." To give it time to sink in, I listened it twice. After that, I turned my phone to Pancake and silenced it. Pancakes were Evelyn's morning preference. He continued to remain with us. Tomorrow was her flight back. I requested an extension from my professor. She had already informed me. I had to be with relatives, I told him. "Sounds important," he replied. By the middle of the afternoon, the panic manifested itself physically. As if they were trying to pitch Tupperware, my folks knocked on my door. My mother was holding something. Perhaps a peace offering, perhaps a folder. Despite his dignified attire, my dad appeared nervous. When he wanted to appear sensible, he always wore a blazer. Getting the door was Graham's offer. I dismissed him with a wave. "Not at all. Mine to manage." I took it open. We decided to drop by and have a brief conversation. "Just to set the record straight," my mother remarked softly. My father gave a nod. Evelyn, in particular. We believe she could have misinterpreted. She probably did. They requested a private conversation with her. I summoned her from the upper floor. She seemed at ease. Unreadable expression, arms crossed. She gave me a glance. "Only if you choose to," I said. She gave one nod. Yes. I entered the kitchen, but remained nearby. Protective, not eavesdropping. They were kind at first. They did it every time. We had no intention of hurting you. Simply said it was an extremely busy day. You are loved by us. We do, of course. You claimed I wasn't family, Evelyn. My mother let out a gasp. We didn't say that, Evelyn. We've decided you're no longer family, you stated. My dad was precisely as I recalled. We intended it to be limited to close family. Evelyn, I spent 5 hours in the air. You wouldn't even allow me into the premises after I purchased a dress. Mom. My dear, it is unfair, Evelyn. You did neither of those things. There was a long silence. Then she said it. I'm not angry. I just finished. That was it. Hearing her say that made me feel proud for some reason. The door shut behind them 5 minutes later. Evelyn stated, I don't want to keep trying for people who don't try back, as she sat next to me on the couch that evening. I didn't say anything at first. Her strength astounded me too much. I was also a victim of it. I informed her that you didn't. Her head rested against my shoulder. The smear effort began the next morning. Ruth was called by Atlas. According to your mother, you ruined the anniversary because of a miscommunication. Uncle Greg sent me a note. I wanted to check in. You might. This was a full-fledged emotional revelation for him. Because his sisters were insane, Colin informed anybody who would listen that he was now responsible for covering the whole cost of the event. Ruth then sent an SMS. The Will Collins has now been altered. Well, let him enjoy it, I said. I'm not going to try to win over folks who didn't want me. I meant it too. No grandiose farewell, no final altercation, only distance, quiet, boundaries that are immobile. Allow them to spin their version. We are aware of what transpired and we will not return. A couple years have passed. My parents are still not in contact with us. Beside Colin, that remained the same. Last April, Evelyn received her diploma. She returned to urban life, own a little studio apartment that nevertheless seems to be nicer than mine was at her age, a job she loves, and friends that are more like family. Her grandparents are never mentioned. Furthermore, I doubt that she even considers them these days. Colin unexpectedly showed up at our home a few months ago. Graham pulled it open. I remained sitting. Colin seemed worn out, not only in terms of physicality. He inquired as to whether we intended to resume helping Mom and Dad. It seems that the imported furnishings, the travel club, and the retirement residence were all expensive. And he had been paying for it all by himself ever since we shut them off. Naturally, they were willing to do so because they had promised him everything: the legacy, the house, and the finances. The only thing to inherit was nothing. They had been living over their means for decades, it turned out. The wealth numb. Mortgaged to the hilt was the house, the inheritance. A myth with a wine fridge and silk drapes. He was also deceived by it. After a quarrel that I didn't see and don't intend to inquire about, he stormed off. He also cut them off when I last heard. It's actually ironic. They have no relatives left after pushing Evelyn out for not being related. But me, I'm all right. My daughter was my choice. My dignity was my choice. And I choose them once more. Tell me nevertheless if I went far enough or too far. Tell me in the comments below. Remember to press the bell and subscribe if you would want to see more tales like this one.